Good evening. Now it's been a while since the TCG has had a dominant one-card combo style deck like the Halcyon variants and Cyber's Eldritch. While decks like Sun Avalon Ethereum and Brain of Despia have had very strong one-card lines, they have equally strong restrictions to what you can do with them, with heavy summon locks. That all changes with Cyberstorm Access, and the resurgence of a formerly Friendship-best rogue deck, Superheavy Samurai. With the new support, the deck can do pretty much anything it wants with just one card in a discard, be it Barone, Exterio, or Jinzo. Just make sure your opponent doesn't have Droll in hand. First, let's start off with one of the deck's core combo lines. This deck has a ton of different combos and endboards, and if you want to see more than just this one, I very much recommend you check out SUPERPELUDO'S Earth Machine spreadsheet, which is a great resource for piloting this deck. I'll have a link for it in the description for you to check out. In this case, I'll show off a Cyber-Stein combo that ends on Barone, Meteor Exterio, Regulus, 4 Material Appaloosa, Scales, and 2 draws, and then a more standard line that ends on Barone, Borreload Savage, Regulus, 3 Mat Appaloosa, Scales, and 2 draws. In order to do these combos, and by extension most of the normal Super Heavy lines, you need one of its one-card starters and a discard. Its starters are Super Heavy Samurai Motorbike, Super Heavy Samurai Prodigy Wakaushi, Super Heavy Samurai Soul Piercer, and Super Heavy Samurai Wagon. For the Stein combo, we'll use Samurai Bike, as it's probably the best of the bunch. To start off with, we go ahead and discard Samurai Bike to search Wakaushi. All of the starters are used to get to Wakaushi, as it's your main playmaker. We then use Wakaushi's effect, placing Monk Big Benkai in the Pendulum Zone and summoning Wakaushi. Next we use Big Benkai to search Soul Piercer. We then normal summon Soul Piercer and link it out for the Link 1 Scarecrow. We then use Soul Piercer's effect to search Soul Peacemaker. If you didn't use Samurai Bike as your starter, you'll search Bike and discard it to search Soul Peacemaker instead. This is very important as you need to make sure you have a level 2 tuner in your graveyard. Afterwards, we go ahead and use Scarecrow's effect to special summon Soul Piercer from the graveyard. You'll notice Soul Piercer gets looped a lot with this deck. It's one of its core plays. Afterwards, we summon XL Synchro Stardust Dragon and trigger its effect, Soul Piercer's effect, and Wakaushi's effect. You want to use Wakaushi's effect last to chain block from hand traps. Using Soul Piercer, we search Sogaya Booster, then we summon Bike off of Stardust effects. Using these two, we can special summon Barone. This protects us from any hand traps the opponent was still holding. We then equip Scarecrow with Soul Peacemaker and use its effect to summon Scales from deck. Using Scales' effect, we can bring back Soul Piercer back from grave. We then equip Scales with Sogaya, and then summon Soul Gaia. Using these two, we make Gear Gigan X and search Cyber-Stein off of its effects. We then link summon into Ancient Gear Ballista and trigger its and Soul Piercer's effect. We search Spy off Soul Piercer and Ancient Gear Box off of Ballista's effect. Box then triggers to search Infinite Track Tunneler. We then summon Spy from hand and use it and Ballista to make Cleafort Genius. It's important to make sure these zones Genius points to are free, to make sure its search effect is online. Afterwards, we Pendulum summon Box, Stein, and Tunneler from hand to the zone under Genius, and afterwards we can trigger Genius to search Regulus. We can then use Stein to summon Exterio, and then link all 4 off for a 4 Material Appaloosa. We then summon Regulus, equipping Soul Piercer, and finally we trigger Tunneler's effect to shuffle 5 Earth Machines back to draw 2 cards. One thing to note is it's a good idea to use Barone's effect to destroy Soul Piercer, as this gets you a search. While you can trigger Soul Piercer on the opponent's turn when Regulus is sent to the grave, it can potentially be vulnerable to a well-placed Evenly Matched. So what does this endboard do? Well, Barone and Regulus are both Omni Negates, Exterio is effectively infinite Spell Trap Negates, and Appaloosa is 4 Monster Negates. We have 2 cards in hand we drew off of Tunneler, and the 3 we started off with, as well as Scales for a potentially follow-up Pendulum summon. Even if your opponent has Dark Ruler, you have a pretty good chance of having some amount of hand traps to defend yourselves with, like Ghost Ogre. The line that makes Borreload Savage is pretty much the same. In this case, we'll use Wagon as our starter. There are a few differences. Well, before we search Soul Gaia with Soul Piercer, we'll search Spy at this point in the combo instead. Rather than going for Gear Gigan X, we'll go straight for Ballista and search Box, and use Soul Piercer to search another bike. We'll make Genius, and then pen summon the 3 monsters in our hand. We'll search Regulus, and make a 3 Material Appaloosa, leaving the bike on the field. After summoning Regulus, we'll pop the Soul Piercer of Barone, and use the Soul Piercer to search Soul Gaia. Afterwards, we can increase the bike's level to 4 with its effect, and then summon Soul Gaia. Using these two, we make Borreload Savage, and finally use Tunneler's effect. While this might not be the infinite negates of the Stein lines, it does still end on 6, which is hard for any deck to break through. And as I said before, there are a ton of different lines. You can end on Spell Cancel to stop cards like Dark Ruler, Jinzo to stop trap decks entirely, and tons of other silver bullets directed at certain strategies. There's plenty of room for experimentation with this deck. So what do you do if your opponent has Nibiru? Don't worry, this deck has a few ways to play around it, and this line in particular uses a card you might have not seen in quite a while. To start off with, we do the normal Borreload line, searching Spy early on rather than Soul Gaia like in the Stein combo. Now we hit 5 summons on the summon of Excel Sync or Stardust, but this is a pretty bad time to use Nibiru. If your opponent uses it here, you'll still get the tuner summoned off of Stardust, as well as a search from Soul Piercer. Using Nibiru here also lets you tailor your Soul Piercer search to let you grab whatever you need to play through the nib. However, using Nibiru here can be much more devastating as you lose the bike and you have to resolve the Soul Piercer first without knowing if your opponent has Nibiru. But don't worry, because Excel Synchro has a second effect. It can quick effect tag out for the original Stardust, then immediately synchro into a synchro that's unaffected by your opponent's activated effects. If we do this when our opponent triggers Nibiru, we can make a Barone that is unaffected by the Nibiru, and afterwards, we can go ahead and summon the Spy. We can then comfortably combo off from this point. One thing to note is that even if your opponent summons a Nibiru token in a zone that would block Genius's search effect, we can just destroy it with Barone's effect. How about an example duel? Here we're going first, and we will use Soul Piercer as our starter. You'll notice we drew a few combo pieces, including the Garnet that is Box, but the standard end board is still very accessible. For the most part, this combo is done pretty normally. One thing to note is that we could trigger Box by discarding it for Scarecrow, but since we also drew Tunneler, that isn't really necessary. Because we already have Box, we don't need to go into Ballista, and we can instead, later on, to go directly into Genius. As you can see, this is a pretty much identical end board to normal, but we can even summon the Spy to use its on-field effect to steal an opponent's spell trap from their graveyard. While its going first abilities are very impressive, how good is it at going second? Well, thanks to the help of some very powerful blowout hand traps like Droll and Gamma, it's more than capable of winning even after losing the die roll. And because of its 1-card starters, it can play plenty of powerful hand traps. Now for a quick run through of the deck list. We are of course playing triple Bike, as it's your best starter. Then we're playing double Monk Benkai, because it's a very good search card, but if you draw it, it turns off your Wakaushi, so you definitely want to play 2. And of course, we're playing triple Wakaushi. Playing 1 Soul Gaia Booster, as it's a very important extender for a ton of different combos. Triple Wagon, as it's definitely a functioning starter. It's probably the worst one, as it loses to just about every hand trap, but it's definitely worth playing to boost up your numbers. So Pierce is great, not only is it a starter, it's also a extender as you saw. Amazing card, probably gonna get banned though. Samurai Scales is great, it's a nice way to extend, can bring back stuff from grave, but it is a never garnet. If you have it in your hand, you can't really do much with it, at least not in the normal combo ways, so there is an argument to play 2 Scales. Soul Claw is a nice extender. Soul Peacemaker is the best way to summon Superheavy Samurais from your deck, such as Scales usually. And Stealthy, or Spy as it's sometimes called in the OCG, is a never very good extender, can also steal spell traps, which is great. GZ Kiryu is a searchable kaiju, and I don't think I need to explain why that's very strong. Regulus is an Omni-Negate that's a free special summon that can let you trigger Soul Piercer more. Amazing card in this deck, extremely easy to search. Tunneler is a great way to recycle cards and draw more. Something this deck struggles with is turn 2, and Tunneler helps with that. Box is how you search that, but Box can also search Soul Claw, which is pretty funny. Cyber-Stein is kind of the flex pick I'm running in this deck. It's very funny to summon Exterio, might not be the most practical, but it's Stein. If I have an excuse to play it, I will. And in the hand trap lineup of Nibiru, Ash, Ghost Ogre, Gamma, and Drone Lockbird. Ash can probably be replaced for something else. I don't think it's going to be that great this format. It's just kind of here as basic filler. No matter what the format develops into, it'll be at least somewhat playable. Then for the extra deck, the aforementioned Exterio. Then Brave Maserao. It's a pretty strong boss monster, level 12 synchro. It can get a effectively huge attack stat and lets you draw cards. Probably pretty cuttable, but I do like it. Roar on the Floor is just an amazing card, lets you do goofy stuff as cards like Spell Canceller, it's an Omni-Negate, it pops cards, lets you clear your own zones for Cleaver Genius, lets you trigger Soul Piercer. Absolutely play it, don't need to explain that. Savage Dragon is a great end board piece. Excel Synchro Stars Dragon is also very good, it's how you make Barone, and it can play around Nibiru, it can do a lot of different things. Stardust for the playing around Nibiru line. This is another one of those cards that might not end up being played in the end, but I do think it's worth playing. Nibiru is a huge threat, and it's definitely worth to be able to make Barone ignore it. Sarutobi is a very funny level 8 synchro. It's a way to make extra deck cards if you're locked into Superheavy Samurais, if you for some reason had to make Wakaushi use its main effect on field. It removes spell traps, which is nice. Just be able to pop maybe floodgates. It can attack from defense position, which is funny. It also does burn damage, helps you win in time. Gear Gigan X is amazing, just searches mid-level 4 lower machines, very versatile. X's Code Talker helps you close out games. Appaloosa is a great endboard piece. Unicorn gets rid of annoying cards and works well for IP Masquerena. Scarecrow is one of your best play starters. It's a Link 1, a very strong card. Ballista is used to search box. And Genius can search just anything you want. Anything that Gear Gigan can't get, Genius can get. And in the side deck, these are some other options you can play and side deck options. Sargus and Merrymaker are another way to search Regulus if you want to free up your Kirigin X or Genius for other searches. They're definitely worth considering. IP is nice with Unicorn. Saryuya is a way to summon cards like Jinzo and Spell Canceller proactively. While you can summon these out, something like Barone if you have them in the graveyard, that's not as good at going second, and especially for like a Jinzo, you probably want to be able to slap on the field. And Jinzo shuts off trap decks, Spell Canceller shuts off a lot of spells, including Dark Ruler No More, which is a very annoying card. Gamma Seal just represents every kaiju. Because you can't really run spell traps in this deck, you want a way to remove cards off the field, good going second cards, and kaijus are great, so if you feel like Jizikuru isn't enough, you can play more in the side deck. Vanguard Top's an amazing going second card, it's a monster. Link Slayer is about as close to Feather Duster as you can get. Because you can't play cards like evenly to get rid of back row, Link Slayer is a very solid way to do that, and if you end up in a situation where you don't need it to do that, it's also a free extender. It's an Earth, it's a pretty nice card. Trap Eater is similar, it is a way to basically kaiju floodgates, which is very strong depending on the matchup. This is an amazing card, because you can negate Link Slayer, you can't negate this. Arch and Eccentric is a nice way to remove pretty much anything annoying. Its actual removal is targeted destruction, so it's not perfect, but it's a way to get around like 5 Rainbow Magician and other unpleasant things like that. And Prohibition may be a spell, but the logic here is it lets you stop Droll, and if you're at the point in the match where your opponent blew up your Prohibition and that's relevant, you probably already lost, because if you're on turn 2, but Droll is such a nightmare for this deck, it might be worth playing this, or at least considering it, maybe in the side deck for games 2 and 3 when your opponent starts side decking against you. Definitely don't use it going second though, card is unusable for that, but it's a nice way to stop Droll or Nibiru.